welcome along to Snetterton in Norfolk for the first weekend of racing in the 2020 GT Cup Championship. Slightly cloudy skies, the sun is peeking through, the ambient temperature is high, and already the cars are lining up on the grid for the first of our pit stop races of the 2020 season. Sprint race earlier on in the day saw a dominant victory for the number 88 Lamborghini of Michael Igoe. He will line up on pole position for this race that is coming up, the 50-minute pit stop race. Second in the race earlier on was number 59, Will Goff, and he will line up on the outside of the front row of the grid. The cars are heading off onto their final formation lap, so as they do so, let's just guide you through the grid for this first pit stop race of the 2020 season. Michael Igoe sits on pole position with Will Goff alongside, Sam Randon and John Dillon on row number 2, a gap on row number 3 where we won't see the number 55 Lamborghini, so Lucky Kira is on his own. Row number 4 is Lee Frost and Ollie Brown. Row 5, Craig Wilkins and Del Shelton. And then on row 6, it's James Guess and Steve Burt, Steve Rushton and Chris Kemp, Andy Roby and Jensen Lum, with on the 9th row of the grid, Simon Orange and David Franklin. And row 10 is Emmanuel Vinca and Ruben Del Soth. So the cars are just heading round through Coram. It is a 50-minute race. Between the 24th and the 35th minute of the race, all of the cars have to dive in the pits, and because it's the first race of the season, there are no success seconds for anybody to worry about that equalise the field regularly. Everybody remains stationary for a period of 60 seconds before they then get racing back underway. Some of the drivers racing solo, other drivers will swap over, and if it's a Pro-Am combination, the amateur driver has to start the race. The Pro jumps in later. Lights go out, away we go, we're racing at Snetterton, and Michael Igoe gets a good run at the wheel of the Lamborghini to lead the race. Will Goff under pressure from Sam Randon for second place, but it is just Will Goff's GT3 Porsche that stays ahead of the GTB machine in the hands of Sam Randon, running for Team Hard this weekend. John Dillon in his orange Ferrari is down into 4th position, and then in 5th place it looks as though Lucky Kira and Lee Frost are doing what they did in the sprint race earlier on. The two teammates sticking their elbows out and having a good little battle in the early stages, but already, a bit like the sprint race earlier on, Michael Igoe at the wheel of his WPI Motorsport Lamborghini Huracan is starting to build an advantage. He was dominant in the sprint race, won it by over 70 seconds in the end, and is already building an advantage here. In the early stages, mid-pack, good fight going on for the lead of Group GTH. That's for the GT4 machines. James Guess fighting away with Steve Ruston, who's just taken up second in Group GTH from the group winner from the sprint race, that being Craig Wilkins. We'll keep an eye towards that one as things wear on. In fact, here comes James Guess, the Ginetta with its white and blue flashes, then the McLaren, and then the Ginetta of Craig Wilkins. So they are very much together in the early stages of this one. The rest of the field all filing their way through onto the Bentley straight, including car number 22, which is that fabulous Jaguar of Emmanuel Vinca, who claimed top honours as the first of the Jags home for the Smart Track Elite Series in race number 1. Andy Roby side by side with Del Shelton, the two big beamers squabbling away. They are both in the same group as well. They both run in Group GTB, the two E46s. But it's just Shelton ahead of Andy Roby's machine, and there is number 34. That is the Group GTA Ginetta that is started in this race by Ollie Brown, the Team Hard Scholarship winner. Lead battle in Group GTH, very close indeed. James Guess coming under pressure from the championship winning car from last year. Steve Rushton pushing hard, seeing whether he can pitch the McLaren through and ahead of the Ginetta. James Guess hangs on to the right-hand side of the circuit, so he's got the inside line for Ritchie's. Has McLaren got the momentum though? They break together, but round the outside goes Steve Rushton to take up the lead of Group GTH. James Guess down to second in the group, but already coming under pressure, and might drop down to third here, because Craig Wilkins has almost got a run on him as he sits behind. Can't quite do it as they head towards the Wilson hairpin. Out of the Wilson hairpin, McLaren, Ginetta, first, second and third in Group GTH, absolutely rooted together. They'll be turning their way through the left-hander at Palmer, and then down the straight that brings them in towards the braking area for Agostini. The tight left-hand hairpin through onto the infield technical section of this Snetterton 300 layout. Out of Agostini, down the straight and up towards the very fast left-hand kink at Hamilton. Still with the McLaren ahead of the two Ginettas, so that's the championship winners from last year back to defend their title. Steve Rushton will hand the car over in the pit stop window to John Whitehouse, whereas James Guess, who is second in Group GTH, the first of the Ginettas, will remain behind the wheel for part 2 of the race, and the car that's putting him under pressure, the red and black and Dayglow Ginetta of Craig Wilkins, the man from the West Midlands, he will also be driving solo as well. The two of them together. Wilkins trying to pick up the slipstream from James Guess. Guess moves out to the centre part of the circuit to try and avoid the car behind getting in the tow, but Craig Wilkins is almost up the inside there. You can see the nose of the Ginetta dip, but he knew he wasn't going to quite make it through. James Guess then runs a little bit wide coming out of Nelson, which offers up another possibility, but Craig Wilkins is just too far behind to capitalise, and all of this is just allowing that JMH Automotive McLaren 570 GT4 of Steve Rushton just to pull away in the lead of Group GTH. Onto the brakes and in towards the left-hander at Murray's. Craig Wilkins gets a better run through Coram and Murray's, and now he's going to pick up the slipstream of James Guess. The former Radical SR1 racer has got the former British GT competitor right behind him. Craig Wilkins jinks out from behind the slipstream. Remember, Craig Wilkins in the sprint race won Group GTH, and at the moment is sitting third in that group, but it's arguably one of the most competitive groups that we have of the 6 that now exist in the GT Cup Championship for 2020. Onto the brakes through the right-hand hairpin at Wilson. Behind these pair of Ginettas is Del Shelton's BMW, which is still pushing on hard, looking to see whether he can hoist himself up through the order. But for the moment, the McLaren of Steve Rushton, having taken up the lead of Group GTH, you can see he's just pulling away all of the time in his position that for the moment is just outside of the top 6 overall places. Andy Roby's yellow BMW also coming under pressure. A pair of Ginettas sitting behind, the first of which I think is Ollie Brown. Yeah, the next of which is going to be number 67, which is the Team Hard sister car to that, but it runs in Group GTB. And that, for this first part of the race, is in the hands of Simon Orange. You can see the pair of them, the two teammates, absolutely together in their Ginettas. And here are the pair just up the road, the pair of Ginettas, still squabbling away. James Guess still under this pressure from Craig Wilkins. The exit out of Williams onto this long Bentley straight is absolutely key to carry the momentum all the way down and in towards a braking area for Brundle and Nelson. But you can see all of the time the McLaren in the lead of the group is pulling away. And Craig Wilkins this time, has he got the job done? He didn't quite make it a couple of laps ago, but yes, he's through there. And James Guess knew that there was not a great deal he could do. So Craig Wilkins now moves up to second in Group GTH. James Guess is down to third in Group GTH and is now coming under pressure from the Group GTB BMW in the hands of Del Shelton, who is sharing the car with Lamborghini factory driver Phil Keane over the course of this weekend. Lots and lots and lots of smoke coming from the Jaguar there. Now all of a sudden the smoke has stopped again. This is the number 24 car, that's Ruben Del Sart behind the wheel of it, the former Ginetta racer. Not quite sure what the problem was there, but a big puff of smoke from that car. Del Shelton through and ahead of James Guess, so another place overall ticked off, but that doesn't change the class position for either the BMW or the Ginetta of James Guess that's just been overtaken, because they are in separate groups. Now can Del Shelton work his magic and now try and catch the car that lies ahead in the hands of Craig Wilkins? Again, Craig Wilkins is in a different group, so would not matter for the overall championship points. Here is our Group GTH leading McLaren. Now Craig Wilkins, to the naked eye, I think is beginning to close in on that McLaren now. He'll be being pushed along by the BMW of Del Shelton now that he's safely ahead of James Guess, but I think the gap in Group GTH first to second, McLaren to Ginetta, is diminishing here because Craig Wilkins is pushing hard. Long, long way to go still in the race. Of course, remember the pit stop window opens between the 24th and 35th minute of the race. And during that period of time, whether you share the car or not, you all have to head into the pit lane area. Out of the right-hander at Williams, starting to accelerate again down the Bentley straight. The BMW of Del Shelton then all of a sudden starts to slow. James Guess is very easily able to work his way through and pass. Now, is there a problem for Del Shelton? Yes, there is, sadly. The BMW heads off the circuit mid the way down the Bentley straight, and unfortunately that is going to spell retirement for the Jeff Steele Racing prepared car. So here comes Craig Wilkins, lying second in Group GTH. You can see the McLaren of Steve Rushton just ahead. The gap looked as though it had been coming down. It has come down maybe a shade more, not a lot, but it's still going the right way as far as Craig Wilkins is concerned. Another Aston Martin Vantage GT4 that's pushing hard is Chris Kemp in the early stages of this one. He'll be handing that car over to the pro driver Stuart Hall for part 2 of the race. And here is car number 911, which is David Frankland, who was the Group GTB champion from last year, hounding the Whitebridge Motorsport Aston Martin that's scheduled to have been started by Steve Burt in this race. Top Cats Racing Marcus Mantis, that had a few troubles over the course of the sprint race, is still circulating. Jensen Lund is behind the wheel of it at this stage. He'll hand the car over to Warren Gilbert for part 2 of the race, but they are circulating a little bit off the pace in Group GTB to where you would normally have expected them. They lined up 16th on the grid for this one, so they were sort of in the mid-pack and haven't made huge amounts of progress from there. I think there might still be a few issues with the car that they'll be trying to iron out, ready for tomorrow's both sprint and pit stop races. Same format, Saturday and Sunday. One sprint race, one 50-minute pit stop race, and that's the format for the whole of the 2020 GT Cup Championship season. David Frankland threading his way at the wheel of the Porsche out of Agostini, the Aston Martin Vantage GT4 from Whitebridge Motorsport of Steve Burt. He shares that car with former champion Chris Murphy, who will take over for part 2 of the race. Those two still reasonably close together, but not sort of close enough so as to be having a real good fight between the pair of them. Accelerating his way is Steve Burt along the Bentley Straight and looking to try and stay in touch with that Porsche. In the meantime, our race leader, Michael Igo, at the wheel of his Lamborghini, is now threading his way through the traffic. So round through Agostini. The next car that he'll need to dispatch a lap down is the number 3 Top Cats Racing Marcus Mantis, which is dealt with very efficiently by Michael Igo, who we should see out racing in the British GT Championship in 2020. And back to the lead battle in GTH. Well, there is the second place car in Group GTH. Just up the road is the McLaren, raising the dust as well on the exit of Ritchie's Corner. So Steve Rushton is pushing hard. The gap doesn't seem to have come down a great deal more since last time we picked it up. So I think Steve Rushton is doing a fantastic job, the current overall champion from 2019 at the wheel of this Ferrari. Himself and John Whitehouse back to defend the title, but a beautiful new livery on that 570S McLaren for this weekend. Craig Wilkins closing the gap maybe a little bit more through the infield technical section. That might be where the Ginetta has the advantage. The Ginetta certainly seems to lose out, I think, in a straight line, but through the corners, if you harry it, I think it is equally as quick, if not slightly quicker, than the McLaren. Thundering noise of the Marcos Mantis of Jesper Lund that is starting to see closing in his mirrors the car of Will Goff, looking to try and push the Porsche through and ahead and put a lap on it. As for the lead battle in Group GTH, well, Craig Wilkins is slowly just chipping away at the amount of daylight between himself and the McLaren, and it's all for the moment going to plan. There's still the pit stops to be dealt with. Craig Wilkins will remain behind the wheel of the car. The McLaren will be handed over from Steve Rushton to John Whitehouse for part 2 of the race, but the fight is now definitely on for the lead of Group GTH. Flash of the lights for the Team Hard Porsche that's in the hands of Sam Randon, leading Group GTB, putting a lap on the Group GTB Marcos. So that car is now a lap off the lead of its group as well. So they've clearly got a few niggling issues with the Marcos that they'll try and resolve for tomorrow's sprint and pit stop races. But for GTH, the fight is most certainly on. It is as close as it's been so far for the lead of Group GTH, and Steve Rushton is doing a really good job of not making any mistakes, whilst Craig Wilkins is continually doing an equally, you could argue even slightly better job of just bringing down that gap. Lights of praise for Craig Wilkins. Well, Steve Rushton will know that he is under pressure here to be able to see the car behind. The team, I'm sure, will be communicating with him as well that this is for the lead of the group. Out of Agostini, the Ginetta using all of the curbs on the exit, the McLaren staying within the white lines, a brief dab on the brakes as they then pitch the car in towards Hamilton. Nothing doing for Craig Wilkins here, or is there? He gets very close, brakes that little bit later, but then maybe can't quite carry the same mid-corner speed. And in a straight line, this is where I think the Ginetta just has a slight disadvantage relative to the McLaren. Down the Bentley Straight they'll go. The slipstream that Craig Wilkins is picking up will allow him to at least stay within touching distance of the McLaren. But yeah, down the straight, the gap has just opened up a very slight amount. The technical team at GT Cup continually try and balance the performance of the cars in their respective groups. So rear-engined McLaren, front-engined Ginetta, but over the course of the lap you can see they might have an advantage down the straight or through a corner, but there's nothing to choose between the performance of the big wiggle midway through Coram for Steve Rushton. He is certainly pushing as hard as he can to try and hang on to the lead of the group, but Craig Wilkins is coming here. He's as close as he's been in a straight line again. That's where the McLaren has the advantage, but with Wilkins picking up the toe from the hole in the air that's being created, he's not going to drop back too much, I don't think, here. Over the start-finish line, another lap completed. The fight is on. We've still got the pit stop window to open as well before too much longer, as they then thread their way out of Ritchie's. And is this the opportunity? No, he's just too far away again, Craig Wilkins, to try and do anything on the brakes in towards the braking area for the hairpin at Wilson. So it's still McLaren from Ginetta for the lead of Group GTH, but what a fight it has been over the course of the last few laps through Palmer. Now the McLaren just seems to have got away through turns 1, 2 and 3, but now into this technical section through the infield, this is where I think the pendulum swings back in favour of the Ginetta, and he'll start to close up the slight advantage that's just been eked out in the early part of the lap from Steve Rushton. The Team Hard Porsche in the hands of Sam Randon going well. He'll hand the car over to Ben Claydon for part 2 of the race, and Ben is another driver with not huge amounts of experience, but has been getting quicker and quicker and quicker as the weekend has rolled on. Back to the lead battle for Group GTH, still the same order. McLaren from Ginetta, still a very similar gap back as well through the bomb hole. This was the point on the previous lap where we had a bit of a wiggle mid-corner from the lead McLaren in the group, and this time, yeah, mid-corner again. That's where the McLaren in the hands of Steve Rushton just seems to be struggling a bit now. Race leader goes through, pit window open, into the pits, driver change completed, and back out comes car number 17. Now that is one of the Team Hard Ginettas. That is Patrick Collins that's now taken over that car that runs in Group GTA. But neither of these cars fighting it out for the lead of Group GTH have been into the pits as yet. So the fight is still on. Now remember, there are no success seconds applied for the first race of the season. They will all come in for tomorrow's pit stop race, so everybody in theory is off scratch and should remain stationary in the pit lane for an identical amount of time. So we'll wait and see as to whether McLaren or Ginetta can claim a slight advantage and sneak out one ahead of the other. For the moment, they are so evenly matched. Round through Agostini again. Craig Wilkins still hounding the 570S McLaren of Steve Rushton, last year's champion. We've never had, I don't think, a back-to-back champion in the GT Cup. And as we heard, if you watch the sprint race footage from the Saturday, that Steve Rushton and John Whitehouse really want to try and make it a back-to-back overall championship if they can. For the moment, it's going to be difficult just to hang on to the group lead, so hard is Craig Wilkins pushing. Here comes number 67. Well, that is another one of the 3 Team Hard Ginettas that we've got in the field. Simon Orange still pushing on. Craig Wilkins at the wheel of his Ginetta still pushing on. And Steve Rushton at the lead of Group GTH. No let-up or respite in his efforts either. Round through Coram again and in towards the braking area. This is where Craig Wilkins again gets really close, but for Steve Rushton, he knows that come the straights, he's probably always just got the upper hand over that Ginetta. In towards the braking area for Agostini. This is Lucky Kira, who is looking to try and thread his way past and through one of the Smart Track Series Elite Jaguars that join the field for this weekend. Here's John Dillon at the wheel of the Group GTC leading Ferrari. Now, he will hand the car over. He'll be handing it over to the pro driver, Aaron Scott. And for the lead of Group GTH, Craig Wilkins now. Is he going to attack? No, he's still not quite comfortable enough to be able to throw one up the inside at Agostini, because Steve Rushton just about got that covered off in time. So pretty much bumper to bumper now for the lead of Group GTH. Again, that kink, that flick, that fast left-hander at Hamilton. Craig Wilkins now trails the outside line at Oggies, and I think there was a little puff of smoke there before Craig Wilkins spun. I think Craig Wilkins might just have made slight contact with the McLaren, and that has pitched him now into a spin at Oggies. He stalled the engine. He'll get it restarted, I'm sure, but that's cost him time and will have cost him positions. No such worries though for our race leader Michael Igoe, on his own in the car today. He'll share it with the pro driver Dennis Lind tomorrow. More drivers suited and booted in the pit lane, and coming to a halt now in the pit lane is the number 41 SBR Motorsport Lotus. Now, we were expecting Fraser Smart to have started behind the wheel of that car, but that is Fraser now opening the door, which means it's a change of driver to what we were originally anticipating. James Simons would have started. Fraser Smart is about to get behind the wheel by the look of things, and just behind them you can see car number 91, Chris Kemp. The Aston Martin Vantage GT4 is about to be taken over by the pro driver Stuart Hall for part 2 of the race. Remember, the pros cannot take part in the pit stop race in the first part of the race. They have to bring the car towards the checkered flag. As for our race leader though, amongst the traffic again, Michael Igoe finds himself. Into the pit lane comes John Dillon, the pro driver Aaron Scott about to take over that car as well. Great to see Aaron back in GT Cup, and John Dillon as well, who has been sporadically with us since the very beginning of the GT Cup Championship. Aaron will be out racing in the European Le Mans Series next weekend as well, so he's a busy man as a pro driver. Change for the number 72 Whitebridge Motorsport Aston Martin, and also the championship winners from last year are in. Steve Rushton giving way to John Whitehouse in the pit lane, so that is a change for what was the Group GTH leading car. Now, can they get back out onto circuit once the pit stops have concluded and keep themselves ahead of the car that they've been doing battle with, that being Craig Wilkins' car? Into the pit lane also the number 23 Jaguar. That is Alex Stevenson giving way to James Kellett, the pro driver, and the race leader is in. So in comes Michael Igoe. The Lamborghini comes to a halt. Remember, for today, Michael is on his own. He will share the car with the pro driver Dennis Lind tomorrow, but for today Michael is on his own. You can see him just having a chat there to one of the mechanics. They will be adjusting the tyre pressures on the car just to make sure that they put them back into the sweet spot, and any other small adjustments that Michael wants can be done. Also, the number 78 Team Hard Porsche is in. Sam Randon giving way to Ben Claydon, and I think they should still be able to hang on to the Group GTB lead fairly comfortably. Such was the hard work that Sam Randon did in the early part of the race. Out of the pit lane files Will Goff. He'll be looking to try and see whether he can hang on to a overall podium spot at this stage. Out of the pit lane comes Ben Claydon, say substantially less experienced than Sam Randon, but has been getting quicker and quicker all weekend. I think he's now circulating about 4 seconds quicker than he was in testing just yesterday. As for the lead of Group GTH, well, it now looks as though we've got a fight on for Group GTH between McLaren and Ginetta, but no longer is it Craig Wilkins' McLaren following that spin. It's now James Guest that is putting under pressure the McLaren, and remember, the McLaren has been handed over. Steve Rushton not behind the wheel anymore. It's now John Whitehouse, and looks so James Guest is already going to go through potentially and take the lead of Group GTH. The McLaren side by side with the Ginetta on the right and the McLaren on the left, which means James Guest has the inside line as they head up towards Ritchie's. There's one of the Jaguars filing its way out of the pit lane as well that stays out of harm's way, but James Guest does indeed take up the lead of Group GTH, and the championship winning car from last year in the hands of John Whitehouse is now down into second in the group. So James Guest up to 7th place overall with that having happened as well. Down to 8th goes the JMH Automotive McLaren 570 GT4. But is there any more that John Whitehouse can do? Because of course James Guest is settled behind the wheel of the Ginetta. He's been there since the lights went out. John Whitehouse is only just getting into his stint and therefore just getting into his stride, and maybe just a couple of laps to get himself in the groove, and then he can start to push hard again and see whether they can get themselves back into the lead of Group GTH. Here comes Aaron Scott. The Ferrari dives up the inside of Ben Claydon, who was about to turn into the corner, looked in his mirrors and at the last moment saw that the Ferrari was there, so just had to take a little bit of steering input out to stop the car rotating into the corner to the degree that he had originally pitched it in. And as you can imagine, that Group GTC Ferrari in the hands of a pro driver should disappear fairly quickly up the road from the Group GTB Porsche in the hands of the relatively, say, inexperienced Ben Claydon, but somebody that really has been doing a stunning job all weekend. Two Porsches getting themselves together. This is David Frankland fighting away with Lee Frost at this stage. David Frankland, remember, is a group champion from last year. Lee Frost who's been racing Ginettas and BMWs over the last few years, is hoping to mount a challenge for sporadic rounds of the GT Cup, but also Porsche Carrera Cup GB. But he makes short work of David Franklin there, and he's able to very quickly squeeze the Simon Green Motorsport prepared Porsche through and ahead. Here's still that fantastic battle for the lead of Group GTH. James Guest still under pressure from John Whitehouse, despite the fact that John has not been behind the wheel of the car for long since jumping into it. He is not allowing the Ginetta of James Guest to gap him as they thread their way round through Coram and in towards the braking area for Murray. He's ready to chalk another lap into the book. And there is the rather forlorn sight of the number 71 BMW. Del Shelton over the barriers, and I'm sure a rather frustrated spectator. Over the start-finish line comes Will Goff. Now look at his mirrors. There is Aaron Scott at the wheel of the Ferrari. Now this is for second overall in the race. Porsche from Ferrari. They are in different groups. The Porsche is in Group GT3, the new group that's been introduced in the GT Cup for this year. The Ferrari sits in Group GTC as one of the challenge specification Ferraris, the Ferrari 488. But Aaron Scott, as a pro driver, even with less power and less aero, can he get the job done here over Will Goff? On towards the braking area, Aaron Scott already up the inside. Will Goff won't make it too difficult, because even if he lets that Ferrari through, it might be a place overall in the race, but it doesn't affect Will Goff's championship points, because it's the points in your group that count towards the championship tally, remember. So short work made of that overtake by Aaron Scott, and understandably not a great deal of defence put up by Will Goff, because he can let the Ferrari go. Now, Aaron Scott is a long way behind the race leader Michael Igoe. Here is Craig Wilkins. You can see the damage to the front end of that car following contact. In fact, there's damage to both sides of the car by the look of things, so I think there might have been a secondary part of contact going on between that Ginetta and a fellow competitor, or something else out on circuit. As for Group GTH, as they were really, James Guest still just managing to palm away the aspirations of the McLaren of John Whitehouse that sits behind, and this battle has been going around for lap after lap after lap, and the gap hasn't really changed actually. Both of them pushing each other as hard as they possibly can, but neither of them gaining an advantage. James Guest almost ran out of room there on the curves on the exit of Murray's. Needs to be careful that he stays within the confines of the circuit, otherwise he would hand himself a time penalty if he's not careful, but that was pushing the very limit, I would have thought there. Here comes our Group GTB leader, which is Ben Claydon, who took over that Team Hard Porsche from Sam Randon. Flashing lights from Michael Igoe as he looks to try and now get past the Lotus of James Simons. A little puff of dust out the back of the Lamborghini, nothing to worry about. It's just where some oil had been put down on one of the support races, and the marshals have treated it, so there's no worries for Michael Igoe. Rather effortlessly, he works his way past the Lotus in towards the braking area for Brundle and Nelson. Accelerates his way nice and cleanly out of that corner, up towards the bomb hole, in towards the right-hander, very quick right-hander that really pulls you into the apex the way that the corner dips down, and then from there it's round the never-ending right-hander at Coram before you're onto the brakes and in towards the left-hander at Murray's. Michael Igoe was pretty dominant in the sprint race earlier on today, and he has very much dominated this pit stop race as he accelerates his way over the start-finish line up towards the checkered flag. It's a double win in the first two races of the season for Michael Igoe and the WPI Motorsport Lamborghini Huracan GT3. He claims the win by what is going to be another very comfortable margin indeed. For Group GTH, it's all getting rather close, because it's not just the McLaren now. It looks as though Stuart Hall has joined in the fun as well at the wheel of the Aston Martin, but it's just going to be James Guest that wins Group GTH from the JMH Automotive McLaren pairing of Steve Ruston and John Whitehouse. And Chris Kemp and Stuart Hall's Aston Martin really was closing towards the tail end of that race there. Stuart Hall, the pro driver, really starting to ask a few questions. Confirmation of the results. It's a win for Michael Igoe, with John Dillon and Aaron Scott claiming top honours in Group GTC in second place, and Will Goff in third. Lucky Kira was fourth. Ben Claydon and Sam Randon claim honours in Group GTB, with Lee Frost completing the top six. James Guest was first home in Group GTH, head of Steve Ruston and John Whitehouse. Chris Kemp and Stuart Hall and Andy Roby completes the top 10. Outside the top 10, the Group GTA winners come home in 11th. Let's hear from some of our group winners.
Yeah, it was a good start. Tried to keep up with the GT3s. A bit difficult. All around the circuit, you know, the GT3s are very good on the brakes. I think in third lap into it, they sort of like got away, 2-3 car lengths ahead. I sort of had a race on my own for a little while, but I kept my other guys, competitors behind me, and just brought it into the pits. Aaron took over, and we got into we got a win and finished P2 overall. So it was good.
It's been brilliant all day, to be fair. The team's set the car up absolutely beautifully. It's a pleasure to drive. It's not hard work. For myself, obviously I've got Sam in the car, which makes a massive difference. But just finding my feet with it, hopefully over the weekend we'll get quicker. If I can get down below the 2 minutes, I'll be more than happy.
Yeah, Simon done a great job with the problems with the bonnet. When I jumped in the car, we was actually back in the lead. So it was my case of bringing it home and trying to look after it a bit. We had a couple of engine issues, but we got it back to the line, and we got the win.
That was an awesome 50 minutes of racing. Start, I managed to get through into the lead, and then just got caught up, and they're quick. The other Jannetta's really quick, of Wilkinson. Then he had a bit of a moment, rushed in, and then I just chased him down after the pit stop, and then I thought, is it 50 minutes or 500 minutes? It just kept going on and on and on, but I mean, just awesome. What a race. Loved it.
Well, that's all for the moment from the GT Cup at Snetterton, but stay in touch with our social media channels because we've got all the racing action from Sunday coming up soon.